Have you ever heard a story so strange, so chilling, that even years later, people still can't agree on what really happened? Tonight we're diving into one such case, a story of love, betrayal, hidden secrets, and a tragedy that left an entire family searching for answers. This isn't just another true crime story. It's a mystery that blurs the line between accident and murder. And trust me, by the end, you'll be asking yourself the same haunting question. Was it fate, or was it planned? Meet Clara Jensen, a 23-year-old woman full of life, dreams, and ambition. Clara wasn't just beautiful, she had that rare kind of energy that pulled people toward her. She had grown up in a small Oregon town, but she carried big dreams of modeling, traveling, and giving her young daughter the kind of future she never had. But dreams have a way of colliding with reality, and Clara's reality was complicated. She was in a long-term relationship with Daniel Harper, a man nearly a decade older than her. Daniel had once been a day trader, confident, charming, and the kind of person who knew how to make others feel at ease. When she first met him, she thought he was exactly what she needed: stable, experienced, someone who could support her while she built her future. But behind Daniel's smile was a man carrying secrets, the kind that would slowly unravel everything. Their relationship started like a fairy tale. He bought her gifts, promised her marriage, and told her he wanted to build a family. And for a while, it seemed like they were moving in that direction. They even welcomed a baby girl, a moment that Clara called her happiest day of her life. Being a mother gave her purpose, and everyone around her noticed how much she adored her daughter. But even with all of this, there were cracks. Clara's friends whispered that Daniel wasn't what he seemed. He was controlling, sometimes cruel, and had a temper that flared without warning. Clara herself confided in a close friend once, admitting that she'd taken pictures of bruises on her back after one of their fights. But she always made excuses. She said he didn't mean it, that he was just stressed, and that things would get better. But the truth? Things weren't getting better. They were getting worse. Still, Daniel made promises. He told Clara that by summer, he'd finally marry her. He spoke about starting fresh, about how the past didn't matter anymore. He even suggested they should get outdoors more, get healthy together. That's when he came up with the idea. The two of them would hike the most beautiful trails Oregon had to offer. Clara agreed. Maybe, she thought, this was the new beginning they needed. On March 16, 2009, Daniel and Clara set off on one of those hikes. The Eagle's Crest Trail, a stunning but treacherous path with cliffs that seemed to drop endlessly into the forest below. Clara, ever the optimist, even sent her mother a text before they left. It was meant as a joke, but now haunts everyone who reads it. "He's either going to give me a ring or throw me off a cliff. Ha ha ha." The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and for a while it looked like just another couple enjoying nature. Clara even snapped a picture of Daniel on her phone, smiling, relaxed, seemingly at peace. But hours later, everything would change. Daniel told investigators that as they hiked, Clara began acting strangely. She wrapped a towel around her shoulders and laughed, calling herself Supergirl, before running ahead on the narrow, slippery trail. Daniel claimed he saw her lose her balance and tumble over the edge, falling more than 150 feet into the ravine below. Panic-stricken, he said he scrambled down the hillside, cradled her broken body, and tried desperately to call for help. But his phone had no service. With no other choice, he left her there and hiked back to find help. By the time rescuers arrived, it was too late. Clara was gone. On the surface, it looked like a tragic accident, but for Clara's family, that explanation never made sense. Her mother remembers the strange text, her friends remember the bruises, and at the memorial service, while everyone else wept, Daniel barely shed a tear. What really happened on that trail? Did Clara slip or fall by accident, or was this something far darker? Because, as investigators would later discover, Daniel wasn't just hiding grief, he was hiding an entire double life. After Clara's death, Daniel did something that shocked everyone. Instead of staying close to her grieving family, instead of offering comfort or ensuring their daughter grew up surrounded by Clara's loved ones, he packed up everything and moved to the other side of Oregon. It was as if he couldn't get away fast enough. Clara's family thought this was strange, almost cold. They had just lost a daughter, a sister, a friend, and the man who was supposed to love her most seemed more concerned with running away than facing the pain. But Daniel had always been a man who believed in reinventing himself, and this time, his reinvention took him farther than anyone expected. By 2006, he made a dramatic choice. He left the United States altogether. With his young daughter in tow, Daniel relocated to China. Why China? Well, he had lived there briefly during his first marriage, and he'd often told friends how much he loved the culture, the food, and the people. But deep down, many believed there was another reason. Distance. Distance from Clara's family, distance from the whispers, and distance from the suspicions that never really went away. In China, Daniel found work as an English teacher, helping business professionals improve their language skills. He settled into his new life quickly, and to outsiders it looked like he had moved on. But tragedy has a way of following those who run from it. Because in China, Daniel met someone new. Her name was Leanne, a kind-hearted woman who embraced Daniel's daughter as if she were her own. Leanne wasn't just a girlfriend, she became a mother figure, creating a bond with the little girl that Daniel himself described as unbreakable. Within a year, Daniel and Leanne were engaged. Plans for a wedding were underway. 2 ceremonies, one in America and one in China. To most people, it looked like Daniel had finally rebuilt his life. But Clara's family? They weren't convinced. They never stopped asking questions. They never stopped pushing investigators to look deeper into what really happened on that cliff. And their persistence paid off. Because while Daniel was planning a wedding, detectives back in Oregon were quietly reopening the case. They revisited Clara's old photographs, the bruises, the texts she had shared with friends. They combed through every detail of Daniel's past, uncovering things even more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. In 2015, Daniel and his daughter flew back to the United States. He thought he was coming home to celebrate love, to marry Leanne, and to show his family that he had moved on. But at the San Francisco airport, his plans collapsed. As he stepped off the plane, federal agents approached him. They told him there was a problem with his luggage. Daniel was confused, annoyed even. But within minutes, the truth came crashing down. He wasn't being stopped because of his luggage. He was being stopped because detectives believed he had murdered Clara. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. His daughter was taken by child services. And just like that, the past Daniel had tried so hard to bury had caught up with him. For Clara's family, it was the moment they had been waiting for. Finally, justice. Finally, answers. But little did they know, the road ahead would be long, twisted, and far more complicated than they imagined. Because Daniel wasn't just a grieving boyfriend accused of a crime. He was a man with a dark history, and his secrets were about to come out in the open. As the town slowly absorbed the shock of Clara's death, the legal gears began to turn. Prosecutors meticulously combed through every detail of Daniel's life, hunting for anything that could explain how a man so seemingly ordinary could be capable of such cruelty. The courtroom was scheduled to open in just weeks, but already whispers about Daniel's secret life had begun to spread like wildfire. It wasn't just his relationship with Clara that alarmed investigators. Records, messages, and interviews revealed a pattern of deception. Daniel had maintained a tangled web of connections with Clara's family that no one had suspected. He was close to her father, often offering unsolicited advice on financial matters, and had even volunteered to help her younger sister with tutoring, acts that initially seemed generous but in hindsight appeared calculated. Detectives uncovered messages from Daniel to Clara's best friend, some flirtatious, some disturbingly controlling, suggesting that his charm was a tool rather than a reflection of genuine care. He was always in control, one investigator later said. He made everyone feel safe, until they weren't. The evidence the prosecution planned to introduce was horrifying. Forensic experts detail the timeline of digital footprints, revealing how Daniel had manipulated security cameras, deleted messages, and even forged emails to create an alibi that initially seemed airtight. One piece of evidence in particular sent shockwaves through those preparing for the trial: a handwritten note found in Clara's personal journal, penned hours before her death, expressing fear of someone she once loved. Daniel's defense team insisted he was innocent, portraying him as a victim of circumstance, a man unfairly accused. They claimed that Clara's death was an accident, a tragic misstep, and tried to shift suspicion elsewhere. But as the prosecution presented photo evidence, text messages, and witness testimonies, the story became harder to deny. The town was riveted. Every day brought new revelations. Neighbors came forward with odd sightings, colleagues described strange behavior at work, and even friends admitted that they had once been warned by Daniel himself not to cross him. These testimonies painted a chilling picture. Daniel was not merely capable of deceit, he thrived on it. As trial day approached, Clara's family grappled with a mixture of grief and a desperate need for answers. Her father, usually stoic, now seemed haunted, replaying interactions with Daniel in his mind, searching for signs he had missed. Her mother struggled to contain her anger during interviews, while her younger sister refused to speak publicly, retreating into silence. The town's courtroom, typically a place of routine hearings and minor disputes, was transformed into a stage for a drama few could have imagined. Media outlets descended, eager to capture every moment of what was already being called the case of the decade. Court officials took unprecedented precautions, fearing the attention the case would attract. On the first day, Daniel entered the courtroom with a calm, almost detached demeanor. Observers noted how he scanned the room, making fleeting eye contact with Clara's family before taking his seat. Prosecutors exchanged subtle glances. Every inch of his behavior would be scrutinized and dissected in the days to come. Opening statements set the tone. The prosecution's voice was steady but charged with emotion, emphasizing Clara's life, her dreams, and the betrayal that led to her untimely death. This was not an accident, they said. It was a calculated act by someone she trusted above all else. Daniel's defense countered, highlighting inconsistencies in witness statements and questioning the reliability of digital evidence. "We ask you to separate emotion from fact," they urged the jury, attempting to pivot the narrative from Daniel's intentions to a debate over circumstantial evidence. But the most gripping moments came when the first witnesses took the stand. Friends who described Daniel's sudden mood swings, colleagues who noted his obsession with control, and family members who recounted how he had subtly isolated Clara in the weeks leading to her death. Each testimony chipped away at the image of the charming, reliable partner he had cultivated for years. And then came the forensic expert, revealing the final damning detail: DNA evidence on an object near the scene that matched Daniel's. Combined with timestamps on deleted messages, the prosecution painted a picture of premeditation that was hard to refute. By the end of the day, even the most skeptical jurors were unsettled. The trial was no longer just a legal proceeding. It was a window into the disturbing psychology of a man whose outward persona hid a darker reality. The trial dragged on for weeks, each day uncovering more layers of Daniel's deception. What shocked the town most wasn't just the crime itself. It was how deeply Daniel had infiltrated every corner of Clara's life. Old friends testified that he had subtly isolated her from people who might question his behavior. Neighbors recounted strange late-night visits, odd noises, and subtle signs of tension that they had once dismissed as normal domestic issues. But the courtroom's most explosive moments came when Clara's younger sister took the stand. For months, she had remained silent, too grief-stricken and intimidated by Daniel's presence to speak. Under oath, she revealed the messages Daniel had sent her directly, masked as concern, but laced with veiled threats. He would always say, "Don't tell anyone what I help you with," she whispered, her voice breaking. At first, I thought he was just protective, but I realized later he wanted control. The prosecution followed with digital evidence, screenshots of deleted chats, security camera footage manipulated to create alibis, and even location data showing Daniel near places he had claimed he never visited. Each revelation painted a portrait of a man obsessed with control, willing to manipulate technology, people, and circumstances to maintain his facade. Then came the moment that silenced the courtroom entirely. An anonymous letter previously withheld was read aloud. It contained details about Daniel's past relationships, patterns of emotional abuse, and previous threats, proof that his actions toward Clara were not impulsive, but part of a disturbing history. The jury, the family, and even the press could hardly believe the level of premeditation. Daniel's defense attempted to counter, claiming the letter was fabricated, evidence manipulated, and witnesses influenced by emotion. But each argument fell flat in the face of overwhelming physical, digital, and testimonial evidence. By the third week, it was clear that the defense was fighting a losing battle. Outside the courtroom, the town had transformed. Shops displayed memorials for Clara, candlelight vigils were held, and social media buzzed with outrage, sadness, and disbelief. Everyone seemed to ask the same question. How could someone so outwardly normal commit such a calculated betrayal? The final day of the trial arrived. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. After hours of closing arguments, the jury retired to deliberate. Time seemed to slow. Clara's family, worn and tearful, clung to each other. Daniel remained composed, almost eerily calm, as if confident the jury would overlook the evidence stacked against him. Hours later, the foreperson returned. The words echoed like a thunderclap. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Daniel Carter, guilty on all counts." A collective sigh swept through the courtroom. Clara's mother collapsed into her husband's arms, sobbing in relief and sorrow. Friends hugged, and even some of the media present admitted the verdict felt like justice long overdue. Daniel's composure finally cracked, a fleeting glance revealing panic, disbelief, and a dawning understanding that his carefully constructed facade had collapsed entirely. Sentencing followed shortly after. The judge, stern and unwavering, spoke of Clara's life, the calculated nature of the crime, and the irreversible impact on her family. Daniel was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving behind a silence that felt heavy, almost sacred, a mixture of grief, relief, and the sobering acknowledgement of human vulnerability. In the months that followed, Clara's family struggled to heal. They established a foundation in her name dedicated to supporting victims of emotional abuse and domestic manipulation. Her story became a cautionary tale, reminding others that danger often hides behind charm, and that vigilance and communication can save lives. For the town, the trial remained etched in memory. Neighbors would whisper about the shocking betrayals, the meticulously hidden secrets, and the man who fooled everyone, even those closest to him. And for Daniel, life behind bars became a stark, unyielding reality, a life stripped of control, influence, and the ability to manipulate anyone ever again. Though the story ended in justice, the emotional scars lingered. Clara's life had been tragically cut short, her dreams extinguished, but her memory lived on, a symbol of resilience, love, and the imperative to see beyond surface appearances.